So yeah, welcome to the online people as well. My name is Anne Hennig, and I will present the paper we wrote together with Heike Dietmann, Franz Lehr, Miriam Mutter, Melanie Volkhammer, and Peter Meyer. The title of the paper is Your Cookie Disclaimer is Not in Line with the GDPR. Why? And that's basically the question we wanted to answer. So as you might guess, we will talk about cookies today, obviously not the evil ones, but the digital ones. Since the GDPR, since the used general data protection, sorry, I'm hearing myself.
It's only the one should be fine.
Should be fine? Okay. No? Do we have another mic?
There's no one online that's unmuted. Okay, should be fine.
Okay. So yeah, since the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR, went into effect in 2018, you probably noticed that every website visit in Europe is accompanied by cookie disclaimers. And while some of them might be funny, some are just annoying because you have to click everything like you didn't want to. And the question still is, which of these cookies is in line with the GDPR regulations, or are they in line with them? We did a prior study, where parts of our group categorized and analyzed the design of the top Alexa top 500 cookie disclaimers of German websites. They categorized them according to certain design aspects. And for this study, we specifically choose 2 design aspects which can be tied to a potential GDPR violation. So let me quickly show you what aspects we looked at. It was first cookie disclaimers that highlight the accept all options, which can be shown here. So you see the accept all option is highlighted, and the manage cookies is doesn't have the same emphasis like the accept all button. We also concentrated on cookie disclaimers that use opt-out procedures, which can be seen here. So you see that more than only the required or technically necessary cookies are pre-selected. And if you only want to have the required cookies, you have to actively deselect the other options. What is the legal background? When we're talking about GDPR and possibly potential GDPR violations, what is the legal background with respect to highlighting? To be clear, GDPR, the GDPR compliance of highlighting the accept all button is disputed. So there's currently no real regulation that says highlighting the accept all button is not allowed. It obviously heavily nudges users to accept all cookies. And there's a first judgment by the Rostock Regional Court in Germany, where they ruled that that cookie disclaimers should be equal in design, visually, and technically. So which would then mean that highlighting is not equal, it's not an equal design. The regulations with respect to the opt-out procedure is much clearer. Here it is definitely said that applying an opt-out procedure is not GDPR compliant. This was judged by the European Court of Justice in 2020 with the Orange Romania regulation, where it says that the refusal of consent should not cause greater effort than the granting of consent. And in the Planet 49 decision, also by the European Court of Justice, it is said that consent is not effectively given when used by when an opt-out design is used. So you probably, I mean, you saw my examples from the beginning, and you probably have seen some of those disclaimers on your own. Since 2018, those designs are still in use. And that's where we asked, so how do websites justify the use of those potentially not GDPR compliant cookie disclaimers? We also ask ourselves what would need to happen for websites to change the current design of the cookie disclaimers to a more privacy-friendly design. And is there a difference between websites that show only highlighting versus websites that show highlighting and opt-out procedure? For this, as I said, we used the previous study as a basis. We used the Alexa top 500 websites and the categorization. We only looked at websites that were either in German or in English, which in the end were only were 389 websites. We then looked at their cookie disclaimers and only considered cookie disclaimers with highlighting or the cookie disclaimers that used highlighting and the opt-out procedure. So in total, 239 websites were not considered, but we had a closer look on 150 websites. From those 150 websites, 183 websites only use highlighting. We called this group highlighted only, and 12 websites used highlighting and an opt-out procedure, and we called this group highlighted and opt-out procedure. We then contacted the websites, specifically the data protection officers of the websites. We used electronic contact since this has been shown as the most cost-efficient way to contact a large group of persons. We contacted in the first group, in the highlighted only group, we contacted the data protection officers via email in 123 cases, and we contacted 12 websites via the online form on the website. We also found 3 postal addresses, which we did not include because we said we cannot guarantee them the same amount of anonymity, so we did not contact them at all. From the 12 websites that used highlighting and the opt-out procedure, we contacted 11 websites via email and 1 via the online form. So in total, we contacted 147 websites, respectively the data protection officers of the websites, and asked them what do they think about the design of the cookie disclaimers. We then gave them 4 weeks to answer our questions. If they did not respond within 4 weeks, we sent a reminder, and we didn't want to push further, to put further pressure on them. So we said, okay, we extend the deadline for 3 more weeks. You have 3 more weeks to answer our questions. Please do so. Yeah, and in the end, after 7 weeks, so 7 weeks after our first notification, we checked all websites again to see if they had changed the design of their cookie disclaimers, even if they did not answer our questions. So what, now we come to the more interesting part, what did they answer? Unfortunately, we did not get much answers. So the data protection officers and in general, the websites were very hesitant to answer our questions. As you can see here, we contacted 123 in the highlighted only group by email, 1 via online form, and that's what we got as a response. So only 6 persons answered to our email in the highlighted only group, and 1 person in the highlighted and opt-out procedure group answered our email. None of them answered the online form requests. The responses were also only partial, so we asked 4 questions. Some of them answered just 1, some of them answered just generally. All questions in 1 answer. Yeah, and we also got emails of refusal only in the highlighted only group. So 13 websites that we contacted via email said they don't want to answer our questions, and 3 answered our online forms or online form requests that they don't want to answer the questions. So the basis for making good, informed judgments out of this is really low. But let me quickly show you what they answered, because I think this can be transferred to a larger group. One person said, as a data protection officer, I was informed about the design, but had no power of decision. Only the persons responsible, and I think he was referring to the marketing department, only those persons can answer your questions, but please understand that they currently don't have the time and capacity to answer your questions. So, like, don't contact us anymore, basically. Another person answered more, so he had more time to answer, obviously. He said, we considered recommendations of the IRB, which is this is in my notes, and I'm not sure, it's the International Advertising Bureau, so something, they do recommendations for online marketing advertisers. They also consider recommendations of SourcePoint, which is an online marketing company. They obviously do some recommendations for cookie disclaimers as well. And they considered the marketers' law departments. I'm not sure what they meant with that. We didn't ask for it. So they obviously asked some law departments. And they also said they made a market analysis and looked at other websites, how they display their cookie disclaimers, and if they are like on a legal basis. Another person just said that the cookie disclaimer was developed in workshop with the state's data protection authority. So they also refer to kind of another authority which designed the cookie disclaimers with them. And one person said, we tested several designs, and the current version, which was that the accept all buttons highlighted, does not seem to negatively influence our users. So we kept the design because it fits in our corporate design. So they did not specify what kind of analysis they did or how they tested it, but at least they had an answer to our question. Yeah, so sorry. So one person just said, we considered the design and we changed it. There were no further answers there. And two did not answer the question why they choose this design at all. So what we then did is, as I said before, we checked whether their websites changed the design without answering our questions. Before the notification, obviously, no one used neither highlighting nor out procedure. We had 135 websites that used the highlighting and 12 websites that used highlighting and the opt-out procedure. After the notification, 7 websites didn't use neither, so neither highlighting nor the opt-out procedure. They changed their cookie disclaimers completely. 132 still used highlighting. Some of them transferred from the highlighting and opt-out procedure group to highlighting only. So some websites did not change both, but only changed the opt-out procedure and kept the highlighting, which is why this number is relatively high. And we had 8 websites out of 12 who decided to change and not use the opt-out procedure anymore. So at the end of our study, but before we could finish our paper, so in December 2020, there was a slight change in the legal situation. In Germany, the Conference of German Data Protection Supervisory Authorities published guidelines that clarified or made further recommendations to the design of cookie disclaimers. They clarified the requirements for a legally compliant use of cookies. And they also included recommendations for the design of legally compliant cookie disclaimers, which in the end meant that opt-in procedures are necessary to ensure an informed consent. So the opt-out procedure is not cannot guarantee an informed consent, and the decline options have to be designed equally to the accept options. These were only guidelines. This is not a regulation yet, but we nevertheless wanted to see if that changed the cookie disclaimers. As I said before, we had some changes in August 2021, and after the recommendations were published and we gave them some time to accommodate or to change the cookie disclaimers, so we had again a look in March 2020 whether the design of the cookie disclaimers on the websites changed. We saw that two further websites got rid of the opt-out procedure. So in the highlighted and opt-out procedure group, we only had 6 websites left from 12. We had 124 websites from 135 in the highlighted only group. And we had in the end 17 websites that neither used highlighting nor the opt-out procedure. This is not like big changes, but what we definitely saw is that in this time between our checks, most websites were kind of fiddling with the design of their cookie disclaimer. So they tried several designs, and we decided to check at 2 points, but we saw that they changed it in between as well. So I think we will see further changes here. And just for some reasons where I was looking for the screenshots, and I saw that even in the time from March till now, many websites have changed the designs even more. So what does it mean? We had this example at the beginning where the accept all option button was highlighted, and in March 2020, this is what the website looked like. So they included the reject all button, and they made both buttons equally in design. We had this website with the opt-out procedure, and the company now changed the design and uses the opt-in procedure, where you have to specifically say if you want to have more than only technically necessary cookies, you have to select them. So to answer our research questions, how do websites justify the use of potentially non-compliant cookie disclaimers? We can say that websites obviously orient themselves on other websites. They also orient on governmental websites. That's what some of them said. So they have some kind of they look at other websites, what they do. The websites probably apply a risk-benefit analysis and weigh the risk of potential fines to the benefit they have from collecting user data. And something that you might have seen yourself is that they obviously use predefined templates where some of these options are just predefined. We asked what would need to happen for the websites to change the current design of the cookie disclaimers. We did not get answers to that. So we don't really know how to answer the question. We got some answers off the record that we could not include in the paper, obviously, but I can tell you that we got more answers than I stated here. And so we suggest that, for example, official and especially governmental websites need to be positive role models because, as I said, other websites orient themselves on them. Supervisory authority should provide unambiguous guidelines so that we don't have this gray area where websites can decide on their own if a design is compliant or not. We saw that recent guidelines on dark patterns in social media platforms, in social media platform interfaces, which were given by the European Data Protection Board, can be a step in the right direction to provide those guidelines. We also asked if there's a difference between websites that show only highlighting or highlighted only, versus websites that show highlighted and opt-out procedure. And sorry, there's one wrong slide in here. So we would say yes, we saw a difference. Only 3.7% of websites that used highlighted only changed for a more privacy-friendly design, whereas nearly 60% of websites that used highlighted and opt-out procedure changed for a less privacy-invasive design. Okay. And as you can see, the rates increased even more after we checked in March 2020. So what we can see here is that clear legislation is definitely helpful. So just a quick summary, we notified 147 websites in Germany that their cookie disclaimers are potentially not GDPR compliant. We asked them for reasons why. We did not get much feedback on the record. So, but we suggest that websites benefit from the use of non-privacy cookie disclaimers, and those benefits outweigh the risks of potential fines. The risks are not very concrete to the websites because there are some legal gray areas. So we suggest that supervisory authorities should provide clear guidelines, and we need more positive role models, especially in the political and governmental spectrum, where we need to have websites that apply those rules. Something that we kind of found out, which is not really tied to our findings, but we found that maybe the management level would be a better contact person for future studies, because the data protection officers obviously were either hesitant to answer the questions, or they referred to other departments, or yeah, they didn't want to answer the questions. So that's it on the topic of cookie disclaimers, and I'm happy to answer